Hi there, my name's Dawn Skelton. I'm a Professor of Ageing and Health at Glasgow Caledonian University and co-lead of the Ageing Well Research Group. I've been asked to talk to you a little bit about getting research into practice and some of the research that goes on at Glasgow Cali. And I'm going to introduce you to FaME. FaME is a falls management exercise program that myself and colleagues developed nearly 20 years ago now. I'm an exercise physiologist, and my interest was to prevent falls, to try and reduce the impact of falls anyway, even if we couldn't stop them. And my postdoctoral work after my PhD was very much about the different components of fitness that might be needed in an exercise program that might help manage falls. So this FaME program was used as an impact case study in the last research exercise for GCU. So it was returned in 2021. We submitted 7 case studies as part of the university impact assessment, and 6 out of 7 were rated world leading with outstanding impact. So we punch high above our weight for a university in terms of the work we do that leads to impact. So let me talk to you a little bit more about FaME and how it got into an impact case study. But basically, FaME reduces falls. It's an exercise program. Falls are one of the main reasons for hospitalizations, the main reasons for going into care homes. And of course, it causes extreme distress if you break a hip and the person ends up with serious mobility problems. In fact, almost half of all people who fracture the hip don't get round to walking again in the future, and about a third will be dead within a year. So a hip fracture has a major outcome on life expectancy and quality of life. We all fall. At any age. We will have falls, we'll have tumbles. Generally, we bounce straight back up again, look a bit embarrassed and walk off. But as we get older, we have more trouble getting up off the floor. We're more likely to injure ourselves, we're more likely to fracture. So what is FaME? Well, FaME is a 9-month exercise program, so it's not short. And in fact, it's also been shown to still work at 6 months, but much shorter than that, you tend to get short outcome measures, but you don't reduce falls in the longer term. But we know if FaME is delivered with fidelity, so that's at least once a week class, twice a week at home to do some exercise to keep that dose high and to change habits. And we know it needs to be challenging in terms of balance. So we need to feel a bit wobbly while we're doing it. It needs to be progressive in terms of strength training, and we need to regain the skills to get up off the floor. Basically, so we don't end up calling ambulances just to pick people up, dust them off and put them back in their chairs. So FaME works. We know that from a multiple number of studies. You can see the references in the bottom left of the slide. But essentially, depending on the population group and the duration or length of the program, it will reduce falls anything between 26 and 54%. So as I said, you can't stop all falls because some falls are medical. Some falls are literally you fall over. Anyone would fall over, for example, skiing, although you don't get very many older adults doing that. But of course, the majority of falls probably are just due to poor strength and balance, being unable to correct a trip from becoming an actual fall. So falls are reduced with FaME, but also, and this is really important, it makes a difference to people's habitual physical activity. They become more active. One thing we know with fallers is that they are fearful. They become fearful, even actually if they don't fall very often, because they see their friends and colleagues falling and going into care homes. And that's the last thing people want. They perceive that falls are an indicator of frailty, and indeed they are. But we can do something about that. And if we change people's physical activity habits, we not only help keep them upright, but more importantly, we affect all sorts of other health outcomes, both physical and mental. So FaME increases habitual physical activity by between 100 and 170 minutes a week. That means that more people are meeting the physical activity guidelines for health, and therefore will have an impact on cancers, heart disease, stroke, COPD, and all the other symptoms, all the other problems and diseases, which being more active can reduce symptoms and improve quality of life. Importantly, although this seems a very long-winded exercise program and potentially very expensive, it provides a huge return on investment. And this has been done by Public Health England and a number of organisations and companies over the years. And essentially, for every pound invested in the FaME programme and delivering exercise to people who fall, there's a return to the public purse of between £2.90 and £50, again, depending on the population, the level of frailty and the number of people that go through the programmes. So FaME works. We know that from research, and research which is expensive, but really worth doing. So all of these studies have been randomized controlled trials, unbiased, in other words, not a service evaluation, not just following a group of people from beginning to end, but randomly putting them into an active intervention group or a control group, following all up over time. Irrespective of whether they complete the program or not, their data is kept within those groups, and we can still show that falls are prevented. How did it all start? Well, many, many years ago, I developed the first randomized control trial. It was actually published in 2005, but the actual study was done in the late 90s. And I actually came out of academia for a while because it was so exciting to see the changes it had with people that Merton Sutton and Wandsworth Health Authority employed me to run the first falls exercise programs in the UK. And over time, we got some funding from the Department of Health to develop training so that we could train physiotherapists and specialist exercise instructors to be able to deliver this program with fidelity. In other words, we need people to do enough exercise with enough challenge over a long enough period that you have physiological changes and it becomes a habit. Now, this is important because quite often we think of exercise in older people as seated and gentle. That is not what FaME's all about, because if you do seated and gentle, you don't reduce falls. So really important that we needed to ensure that people were trained to deliver this with fidelity. And as part of that, I set up with the two colleagues in the photograph a not-for-profit training company. And we're still in existence 20 odd years later, training physiotherapists, exercise instructors, occupational therapists, and others to deliver FaME with fidelity. We've also done a lot more research over time. So it was a fairly small scale randomized control trial, that first one, where we had people who had fallen at least 3 times in the previous year, very high risk fallers. Most of them came in with their walking frames. Most of them, all of them, in fact, required transport. And over a 9-month period, we showed a big reduction in falls. We then looked at this in a much bigger study with many more people and a very long follow-up this time, 2 years follow-up. And this time we were recruiting from general practice, people who were sedentary, had had 1 fall or maybe 2, but not injurious. And essentially we were looking at whether FaME still worked in a lower risk transitioning to frailty group rather than your very high risk fallers. And that study also showed a reduction in falls and over a 2-year follow-up, and extreme maintenance of physical function as well. So a maintenance of independence, much beyond doing nothing as we get older. We then looked at rolling this out real life. And this is important because quite often a trial gets great results, and when it's implemented in the NHS or in public health, it doesn't seem to have the same results. And that's because generally it gets watered down, cost cutting, corners cut, fidelity lost. But we looked at this FaME delivery in real life across the East Midlands area, 28 different exercise programs, each with up to 15 to 20 people in, and we produced a FaME implementation toolkit. So how do you run these programs with the best fidelity to get the best outcomes? How might you think about employing the instructors or the transition from physiotherapy to community-based exercise, referral forms, venues, what equipment do you need? And essentially helped to produce a spreadsheet on the cost effectiveness to deliver an exercise program that reduces falls. In amongst that, we've done studies looking at people with visual impairment, severe visual impairment. It's an interesting process to run a group exercise program with people who are blind, but it's all about the instruction. So the exercise program is the same. It's just how you work with the individuals within that group. We also developed a computer exergame version using Connect, and have shown that in sheltered housing, we can vastly reduce falls rates by some supervised game playing. People are doing their exercises, but it's got a competitive edge. We've developed some apps so that people can do their exercises at home, being prompted by their smartphone. And we're currently looking at a national rollout. Again, it's all about the different models for commissioning and for costs to run these programs, and also how we ensure we can get more ethnicity, diversity, involve more people from very low socioeconomic backgrounds, because they tend to not attend for as regular a period of time. In amongst this, we've worked with colleagues who've been implementing this, and they themselves have got little funding pots from a variety of different places to look at their return on investment. So knowing how much they have laid out in terms of costs to run these programs, the improvements in strength and balance and physical function and falls rates that they see in the people that come through their programs. And as you can see in both Edinburgh and in Gateshead, really good return on investment. It's a good program that makes life changes to older adults. It increases their ability to be socially active, less lonely, more engaged, and more importantly, to live in their own home for longer, rather than require care packages or have to go into a care home. Within this, we worked with Public Health England on their return on investment tool. They actually did a big analysis of all the programs that run across the UK and worldwide to see which ones would have good return on investment within the UK. And there were 3 exercise programs that were chosen. FaME was one of them. And this toolkit is available online for commissioners to allow them to cost out the delivery of FaME in their particular setting, knowing how many people they want to put through programs to make a difference to hopefully over time reduce hospitalizations and other health costs, never mind the cost to the individuals and their family. And so Public Health England have been instrumental in allowing us to follow the rollout of FaME across the UK. It helps that FaME has been mentioned in a plethora of documents on strategy and recommendations, everything from the Royal Osteoporosis Society, Department of Health, Age UK, even over to the CDC in America. That's the big body for health over in America, but also within the UK's physical activity guidelines, in Wales, in their prudent healthcare workforce documents. And we even now have markers, quality, strength and balance markers on delivery of exercise programs, which it's recommended that public health bodies complete and send back in to Public Health England. So there's a lot of interest in FaME, and we produced a toolkit over time, which is endorsed by NICE. And the important thing here is really to ensure it's delivered again with fidelity. It's not turned into a gentle seated program which will not reduce falls. What we've managed to show in the impact case study, and this is mostly to do with networking at conferences, chatting to people, making sure that you're part of influential expert groups that give information on evidence base. So, for example, I was part, in fact, I co-led the exercise working group for the World Falls Guidelines, published back in September last year. FaME is a World Health Organization best practice case study in their Step Safely recommendations. And in Norway, we've been out and trained instructors in Norway and physiotherapists as well to deliver their national falls prevention programs. And essentially, all of this has come back from those first couple of research studies where we showed that FaME works. Just to give you a little idea then on the sort of effects it's had, mostly good collaborations with other universities. 10 different universities have been involved in research now to do with the FaME programme, multiple National Health Service trusts and local authorities, and a technology company, Myra. We've got 15 published papers, an implementation toolkit, and a shared grant income of nearly 2.8 million. So a lot of money's gone into researching FaME over the years, but more importantly, it's meant that there are nearly 3,700 postural stability instructors now across the UK trained to deliver FaME within a variety of settings. Some of them work in the NHS, some of them work in public health, some work in sheltered housing or care homes. And the important thing here is we have a programme of exercise which is delivered as treatment. So it's not just a nicety. This is making a huge difference to outcomes for fallers and helping people become less frail. We've worked really closely with the Chartered Society of Physiotherapy Special Interest Group called Agile that work with older adults to produce referral forms to allow that seamless pathway between rehabilitation, for example, after hip fracture or after hospitalisation due to falls, out into the community, because we know that exercise to reduce falls is not a quick fix. It's not at 6 sessions or 8 sessions. It's really a long-term thing that makes a difference to all of the things that keep us upright: our nervous system integration, our muscle strength, our balance, our reactions, our coordination. All of these things feed into whether we can successfully make a trip not turn into a fall. And that requires time and it requires habit changes. So we need to move people away from the medicalized rehabilitation setting into community programs, and over time move them from FaME, exercise for treatment, to general exercise programs in the community that mean that we don't lose all of those skills and abilities that we've gained with the FaME training. So just to finish off, we'll think about the last few things where FaME's made a difference. We know that at the moment, FaME is reaching about 10,500 older adults a week. We know that many thousands of people are using the EXA games in licensed rehab centres and care homes. If we actually, if we manage to get half of all of our PSI PSIs delivering at least a couple of sessions a week, we could actually reach over 2 million older adults in a year. But we come back to the fact that essentially this is often considered a luxury to be able to exercise for this long, and so is often not funded, even though we know that in evidence-based exercise has to be long-term. It can't be a short-term fix. We have a community of practice called NFIT, National FaME Implementation Team. And within that, we've got representatives from Age UK, ROSPA, Agile, British Geriatric Society, OHID, that's the people that took over the Office of Health and Disparities, which essentially was Public Health England. There's a 4 Nations Falls Collaborative, and 4 different university academics, all working to support the rollout of FaME over time. And I suppose really I want to enthuse you to think about research. To turn something from research into embedded practice that has an impact is not quick. You do need to stick with it. I've been at this for approaching 25 years now, but if your idea works you need to be passionate, persistent, resilient, and stubborn. So keep turning up at all the meetings and go, why are you delivering a non-evidence-based program? Why have you got seated gentle exercise down as falls prevention when that does not work? So we need to find the hooks for the commissioners. We need to ensure it's easy for them. I would go so far as to say idiot guides to delivery to make sure that things are delivered properly. We need to exert influence. We need to be passionate enough at conferences, at meetings, to make people understand the value of an evidence-based approach to something rather than a cheap and cheerful approach to something. And of course, we need to support the workforce to ensure that carries on through things like communities of practice. We have other case studies we're going to build on within the Ageing Well Research Group at Glasgow Caledonian University, including the functional fitness MOT, which is a way of looking at someone's functional fitness from the age of 50 onwards to see how they compare to others of the same age and sex, and whether or not those components of fitness or those functional abilities could do with something better, some extra work, exercise, in particular, to help ensure we successfully age and are less likely to be dependent. We've got a whole series of work on COCU, Keep On, Keep Up, which is an app-based version of FaME and is taking the world by storm. We've got a lot of co-creation work within some projects looking at European-funded projects looking at co-creation public health interventions. So essentially, we've got a lot going on at GCU, and research can be so fulfilling if you actually get to the point where your idea, your bit of research, your solution to something becomes embedded into practice. And so just encouraging you all to think about research in your future career. Any questions at all, please email me at dawn.skelton@gcu.ac.uk and we'll have a chat. Good luck.